There are different channels, so you can keep that near you in case you want to, you need to do both.
Or keep it over there for the echo.
Yeah. And this is the receiver, so best thing, keep us on your left.
Great.
Left side.
Cool. Can you guys hear me okay? Good in the back? Thumbs up? All right, awesome. Thanks. Hey, so I'm going to turn this down.
No, we got an active feedback chamber.
Cool.
So it'll find the frequency and just knock it out.
Great. All right, we'll talk softly. Yes? There we go. Okay. So this is practical man in the middle and still testing the mic.
Like I said, it's
all right.
an active cancellation system, so it'll take care of it.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Hopefully you're in the right talk here. My name is Jonathan Cran. I'm an advisor for the Source Conference. Also CTO at Pwnie Express. Also like sales guy at Pwnie Express. Also like marketing guy at Pwnie Express. Also whatever. Yeah. Yeah, small company. It's cool. Before that I was QA director at Metasploit, and then before that penetration tester at Rapid7. So what are we going to talk about today? I wish I could see this. It's not good. Well, anyway, man in the middle is a huge topic. It's actually one of those things where I very quickly got overwhelmed with the amount of stuff that we can talk about in this talk. And what I wanted to do is focus this a little bit and talk about man in the middle very specifically on certain types of attacks. One of the things, obviously, the Pwnie Express influence here is local man in the middle on a targeted network and on a local network, as opposed to SSL or to like BGP attacks, right? That's just not that practical for a pen tester. So let's talk about that, and then we'll talk about sort of why this stuff matters this year and why this stuff matters in general, and then we'll get into some practical attacks and some automation, and then we'll talk about some takeaways. So, very quickly, I also, thought, well, maybe I'll spend some time doing some automation for this talk and work on, making things super easy to use. But it turns out there's tons and tons of automation out there. There's people in this room, Ryan Lynn over here, who's put together like some really awesome automation, and I didn't want to sort of duplicate some of the efforts that were already being made with EtherCap and with Beef and things like that. So our focus today is going to be very specifically on the local network and the wireless network, and then more specific than that, getting in the middle, and then from there viewing and manipulating traffic, and then automating some of the easy wins. What we're not going to focus on is SSL, man in the middle, BGP, some of the more complex attacks spanning tree protocol, hot swap routing protocol, or the man in the browser type man in the middle stuff. So we got it. All right, cool. I've always been enamored with this idea of, how do we attack folks, directly around us? How do we target these things? I was walking past a bank in New York one time, and I was looking in, and I saw a machine that was sitting there, and it's running Windows XP, and I'm like, I know I can own this machine, but how do I get to that? How do I actually access that box from standing out here, or even, that specific box? And also, planes, trains, and automobiles. How do you sort of determine what's around you in these environments? So the question is, why do you care about local man in the middle? Hasn't ARP spoofing been around for 15 years? DNS spoofing, these sorts of things. These things aren't really that new. So why do we really care that much? And we go back to this sort of idea of how do we, sort of utilize what's around us I guess really why do we care about ARP spoofing? Why is that a big deal? There's a couple reasons. The trend is sort of toward wireless everywhere. Every device has a smartphone. Everybody has a smartphone. Everybody has wireless. Every smartphone on AT&T will automatically connect to the AT&T Wi-Fi network. Networks are getting more accessible in a lot of ways. Think about retail, think about point of sale. Just being available, that you can access their network. Sometimes it is hard to take control of a particular system. Sometimes the network is the easier target. There's a couple things here. How many people are familiar with ARP spoofing? Pretty much everybody. How many people are familiar with SLAAC, the SLAAC attack? Got one, a couple others. Okay, cool. All right, just trying to judge basically how I should spend my time sort of talking about this stuff. ARP cache poisoning is still a valid attack. You know, there are a lot of mitigations. In my testing, I've seen, you know, some networks, more enterprise actually be vulnerable to it versus, you know, your sort of airplanes, hotels, things like that. There's often mitigations deployed there. SLAAC is stateless auto configuration for IPv6. And it was released 2 years ago by a gentleman at the InfoSec Institute. And it operates in a very similar way, but for IPv6, and allows you to tunnel out over IPv4. So we'll talk about that here in a second. As far as, you know, again, why you should care, would your users really notice if they got an invalid cert? Probably not. And evil twin attacks are sort of still pervasive. So, you know, all of these reasons are sort of bringing man in the middle back to a point where it's really relevant. Android. I just wanted to talk a little bit about this. There was a study done at the Leibniz University of Hanover where the guys analyzed 13,500 Android apps. Found about 1,000 of those vulnerable to no verification on the SSL certificate. It's a pretty common developer bug to basically just specify SSL no verify. I'm sure you've all run into this at some point where, yeah, it's using SSL, but the certificate can actually be swapped out. And so, you know, realistically, it's not verifying the communication between the points, and you know, it's about the same as not having SSL. Okay, great. Another reason to care. ARM devices are getting smaller and smaller. You know, it kind of started out with the Pwn plug. Gum sticks have been very small. The Odroid devices, the SS808. This is a little 1.7 gigahertz quad core. It's about the size of you know, $50 or so. I'm sorry, $50, not $half. And it's ultimately fast enough to run most relevant, most current attacks. You know, similar board here. This is an SS808 by SainSmart. It's $50 on Amazon. You can literally go buy this board, drop Kali on it, and have a full attack platform for $50. Pretty crazy. This, so basically, you know, just kind of building more credibility for why you should care about this. Intel's projecting ubiquitous computing by 2020. We'll see about that. But I mean, obviously the trend is toward smaller and smaller devices. How many of you have seen an iPad in a store recently? A few of you? Everybody? Okay, cool. Yeah, how about this many iPads in the store? Or, you know, this sort of thing. So I mean, retail and point of sale is interesting just because you can sort of get access to the network there, whether it's, you know, a wired network or whether it's a wireless network. Now, I don't know if these things are securely configured, if there's a VPN connection back to headquarters with these, but somehow I doubt it in many cases. I mean, it's almost easier than doing this anymore. Like, why steal the cash register if you can just plug in a device? Also, you know, 4G speed's getting faster. How many people have seen the Freedom Stick? One person, two people, three people? Basically, the Freedom Stick's a rebranding of Clear Wireless. For $2 a month, you can get 500 megs of upload speed on 4G speeds. Pretty cool stuff. If you get a chance, check it out. So, okay, that's all good and well. You know, the trend is toward mobile, trend is toward network everywhere. But securing layer 2 is hard. How many folks are actually getting owned by man in the middle? And really, you know, is it that practical? And you know, this talk is meant to be a practical talk, so let's kind of let's go through some of those attacks. So I sort of picked out a number of different things that I thought were really, really easy to automate and really, really easy to you know, attack. And this is the list that I came up with. So we'll go through each one of these piece by piece. You know, the first thing to say sort of about man in the middle is the easiest way to prevent this thing is to have a strong VPN connection. If you're not actually encrypting your traffic from end to end, you know, there's lots of ways to sort of get around it, even if you're using SSL. How many people have used a throwing star tap? 1, 2. How many people have invented a throwing star tap? I see 1. These things they're awesome. They're like $15 to $20. You can buy them at a number of different places. Michael Osman here has you know, created an easy way to get in line on the network. You know, if you want to buy the professional kit, they're about $40. It's already built for you. You don't have to actually solder if you can't solder like myself. Sometimes it's better to just go with the pre-built. These things are great. What you see on the right, if you can see it in the back, is basically a throwing star tap. What you see on the left is a dual COM port spanning device. And so this is a great way to just get in the middle of a connection. If you have a Dropbox, you can basically put it on the network, plug this guy in, and connect to it. And so you'll basically connect your network through the device and then connect one of your devices off of it. Now, it's not good if you want to manipulate traffic, but if you just want to see what's actually going on the network, it's a great way to do it. Now, you can do a similar thing with just the firewall, right? Or sorry, just a device. If you've got 2 interfaces, you can set up a bridge with bridge utils. How many folks have used a Linux bridge before? Familiar with it? Pretty decent number. This is basically all you have to do in order to set up a bridge on Linux. Use bridge control, type add bridge, and then add the interfaces you want to it. And then at that point, you can basically route traffic through the device. You know, great way to either manipulate it, traffic, or just to get visibility into it. You know, how do you prevent hardware attacks? You know, good physical security is what it comes down to. ARP cache poisoning. So let's talk a little bit about this. Sorry for like bringing up like really old stuff, but it's so relevant that, you know, it's hard to avoid when you're talking about man in the middle. Basically, what's going on is that you're sending ARP traffic to the broadcast address or to your targets and telling them that you are at a particular IP address. They will forward their traffic to you. I won't spend a lot of time on it. You know, it's literally this easy to do. There's lots of ways to do this, and so we won't spend a lot of time on it. What I did want to talk about a little bit, though, is, you know, how do you prevent ARP cache poisoning? It seems, you know, a lot of people talk about how to you know, exploit it, but not a lot of people talk about sort of how to prevent it. And so I've noticed, again, in my testing that you know, in most hotels, most you know, public places, I'm not actually able to ARP spoof. And why is that? Obviously, it's not because of static ARP tables, right? Oftentimes, I think what it is actually, I think what's going on is that they've disabled gratuitous ARP. If you're sending a lot of ARP packets, they're not allowing you to basically send ARP packets anymore. Like, they basically cut you off at that point. Interestingly, Huawei has a patented technique on this that they're not, they published, and you can find it, it's in the notes for this slide if you're interested in it. You know, typically the guidance is to just monitor ARP and make sure that you're not, you know, you're not seeing tons of ARP traffic. How many people familiar with DNS cache poisoning? Cool. I was too. I guess I was confused sort of on DNS cache poisoning about, you know, how do you actually exploit this? You know, there was talk of the birthday attack, which is basically where you sort of guess the transmit ID from the DNS server. Here, I'll actually give you a quick diagram. And sorry for the slide here, but basically what's happening is you've got a DNS server here, your authoritative servers here, your user's actually making your request here. And this is you know, your malicious user. He's going and actually observing traffic coming from the resolver, and then you know, guessing the transmit ID. And that transmit ID is relatively it's a small number, so it's relatively easy to guess. And what that allows them to do is spoof a response back to the user. The user gets either for their single domain an A record, or they get you know, for the domain an authoritative record that allows you to is basically set whatever DNS server you want. It turns out the birthday attack really isn't that relevant anymore. DNS server has been patched. The Kaminsky attack has really been patched in practice. And so really the only way to do DNS cache poisoning, as far as I'm aware, is to actually be in the middle already. And so you have to be observing traffic. And at that point, you can actually see what the transmit ID is and be able to return the response back to the host. Preventing DNS spoofing, DNSSEC is really the way to go. Okay, so the SLAAC attack. This one is actually really, really interesting. So provided by the InfoSec Institute about 2 years ago, I think in 2011, maybe 2012, what they observed was that most of the hosts on a network are already dual stacked. So you can actually provide an IPv6 address to hosts using router advertisements, and they'll pick it up. So this is a typical IPv4 internet, typical setup, right? So you've got your router here. You've got hosts with IPv4 addresses. What the SLAAC attack is going to do is introduce a new router and give out IPv6 addresses to these devices. SP3 will actually pick up an IPv6 address, and anything above that will pick it up. Let's skip ahead to this slide, and basically I'll walk you through the steps here. So, this device here is actually going to get an IPv6 address. The evil router is going to do NAT-PT translation on the device, and so you're going to have this requesting an IPv4 address. This is going to translate it to an IPv6 address, send it out to the server, or sorry, go back. IPv6 address comes to this server. This translates it to IPv4, and then sends the response back. The nice thing about this is that your IPv4 network is still intact, and you're using IPv6 to get out to the internet. Basically, it introduces a new path to the internet. There's no compromise of the IPv4 network, and there's really not a lot of ways to detect this today. So, in terms of packets, what this looks like, and I know you can't see this in the back, so I'll just translate it for you. On the inside of the network, what you're seeing is IPv6 packets sent to that evil router, and then the evil router then translating those and sending those out to the internet as IPv4. The guidance to prevent this is simply to disable IPv6. So that's kind of interesting, right? How many enterprise networks have IPv6 enabled? Probably most of them. Is there anybody here that's actually disabled IPv6 inside one network? Interesting. Okay, cool. Let's skip ahead. So, wireless evil twin. This is another man-in-the-middle technique. First one, wireless, that we'll talk about. And really what this is setting up a rogue network so that devices which can't discern between which wireless networks are available to them are automatically connecting in. Let's talk a little bit about how you might do this. This is the PwnPad. How many people have heard of the PwnPad? Most people? Awesome, cool. Let's do a demo with it. If you haven't heard of the PwnPad, basically what it is a Nexus 7 with an Android interface, but then also an Ubuntu chroot. And what it allows you to do is run security tools on the device from the Android interface. So let me see if I can get us connected here. So bear with me for just a second while I get disconnected. Great. There we go. Perfect. Next. Great. All right, live demos. Let's try this. Come on. All right, you guys see that okay? Cool. So basically what this is a Pwn pad. Again, this image is freely available from our website. If you have a Nexus 7, you can go download it. Really, let's do this. So there's evil twin attacks. What I'm going to do is hit this evil AP right here. It's a little bit slow, but we'll go ahead and give this a shot. There we go. It's going to ask you which interface you want to connect on. So we'll say the internal network. Then it's going to ask us for an SSID. It'll allow us to spoof an SSID if we want. It's using Airbase on the back end, so basically it can respond to probe requests. Give it a second to catch up here. Come on. Backup plan. So I'm going to switch it over to a different wireless network just to make it a little bit faster. Sorry about this. There we go. And we're now at a different address. Okay. Sorry for this. Give it a second here. We'll get it connected. One 72, 16, 10, 7. There we go. All right, let's try this again. Okay. Okay. So equal AP. There we go. Use the wireless connection. Give it an SSID. We're going to turn off automatic probe request connections. And there we go. And we're going to start to get probe requests. Everybody has the wireless off? Yes? All right, cool. There we go. All right, sorry for the delay on that. Just wanted to get this up and going. Live demos are always fun. Let's connect with a client here. So what you're seeing right now is probe requests from clients. And this thing's listening on ATT Wi-Fi, which by default, again, AT&T clients will automatically try and connect on. We've had folks run this during live demos and actually had connections from lots of different folks. Okay, there we go, already connected. And what I'm going to do at this point is, now that I've got the actual connection listening, I'm going to go ahead and run strings watch just to see if we can see anything come across. So select 5, and we don't want to save a log. Go ahead and let that run. And you'll see almost immediately we start getting traffic across. There we go, and I actually have a Kindle. This is a Kindle connecting in. So most of the traffic is actually encrypted, which is nice. Let's go ahead and go to a web page. There you go, and you can start to see some of the certificate strings. Again, this is, I mean, you can do a full TCP dump with this, but this is an easy way to grab traffic. There we go. And let's do an SSL strip on top of this. Is everybody familiar with SSL strip? Is anybody who's no? So SSL strip is released by Moxie Mullenspike. I think it was 2009. It's interesting. I didn't fully understand it until recently. Basically, what it's doing is stripping out HTTPS links in traffic that comes across. And so if you make an initial connection over HTTP, it's going to strip out any HTTPS links, and it won't redirect you to HTTPS. So you're basically stuck on HTTP, even when you enter credentials and things like that. So let's do 5 here. There we go. So that's up and running. And we can actually do a can actually look at the log for SSL Strip to see if we get any posts. Nice, thank you. So yeah. Hang on, just bear with me for a second. There we go, and all right. That'll work. Okay, sweet. So let me go back here and show you this. Okay, so we're still getting traffic coming in. Let me try to go to Facebook on here. Awesome. Yeah, live demo. There we go. And one more time. Cancel that. I'm going to call it here in a second if we can't actually get it going. Okay, so I'm restarting Evil AP. Running SSL Strip. Go. It's already running. Close that. Go. Connecting in. Well, I'm having trouble connecting the Kindle into this device, so I'm going to go ahead and move on. If anybody wants a demo later, I'll give them to them. Great, thank you. Basically, Evil Twin Attack, pretty simple to pull off. The PwnPad itself uses Airbase. You can do this on any laptop. And really the benefit of doing something like this is that mobile phones and devices with wireless are pretty easy to fool into connecting to you. How do you prevent it? You know, basically it's user education. There's not a lot of good ways to prevent this today. There we go. Again, there's not a lot of ways. You can use radius, but there's also ways to attack radius. You can use easy creds. It's probably the easiest way that I know in order to attack radius servers. Again, if they're using stronger authentication, it's not such an issue, but it's definitely an issue if using radius with leap. Does mobile device management help? Not really. Depending on how you set it up, right? You can actually specify that all your devices will automatically connect to a particular SSID. But again, if you don't set up authentication with that, pretty easy to spoof. Forced HTTP is really just SSL Strip, and so this is kind of what I was talking about earlier. Basically, it rewrites links as HTTP, and then provides you with what looks like a secure site. It's pretty easy to pull off. I mean, this is the long and short of running SSL Strip. You forward traffic through your device. You run the daemon on the actual system that's going to strip traffic, and then you forward traffic to it. How do you prevent SSL Strip attacks? Really, the server itself the server and the browser have to agree that they're not going to accept traffic over HTTP, and the way they do that is with an HSTS header. Google has rolled this out on all their properties in the last year. Another way to prevent this is just always browsing to HTTPS dot whatever. There's a series of other attacks. We're not going to spend any time on these just because we're short on time as it goes. But these are all sort of semi-practical attacks with the exception of certificate abuse and BGP attacks. So I'll go ahead and skip through these. There's a lot of tools out there to automate attacks like this. Some things you want to take a look at if you haven't already is DSNF, EtterCap, Beef, Easy Creds. Subterfuge is a relatively new one, but an automated, easy attack platform. I think the takeaways here that man in the middle is really an underrated attack vector in general. It's easier to target people local to you. POS systems are specifically more vulnerable. Drop boxes are providing a credible way to actually get in the middle of networks. And the phones specifically are very vulnerable. Are there any questions? Yeah. Okay, after this, yeah, for sure. Any other questions? Evil Twin? Evil AP or Evil Twin? Right. Basically what we were demoing here, right? The automatic connection into an access point. Yeah. So you're basically creating a twin of an access point. So if there's, what is it here? Courtyard guest. So you can set it up as either a static courtyard guest and run it on a different channel, or you can set it so that it responds to probe requests. And when you get a probe request for whatever your home network is, call it Gabe's G-Man Funky's network address, then this will respond and say, this is, I'm a valid access point for you. Any other questions? Okay, cool. Thanks. Please fill out feedback forms. They're available in the back. Cool. Thanks, guys.